We are just beginning the session. You can stay on.
Okay. Sure, please.
Well, my name is Matthias Hölzer.
Yeah.
I'm the CEO and CTO of Profect Ventus. And the topic of today's talk I will be giving is on comparison of pre and post-constructive annual energy yield assessment based on mast or remote sensing devices and based on SCADA data.
I would like to
Okay, that would be very interesting. Yeah.
participating in the 19th World Wind Energy Conference.
Can you
Today we shall be
introduce yourself, Bhupati?
talking
Mr.
about
Bhupati?
storage and
Yes, I am coming. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hi, good evening and good morning or good afternoon to Mr. Matthews. Yeah, so I'm very happy to be here to give today, discuss about the both onshore and offshore wind resource in our country. Yeah, I would like to say a few words about me. I'm Bhupati, basically mechanical engineer. So yeah, I have been working here in National Institute of Wind Energy for the last 18 years. And recently I took charge over for offshore wind development and wind resources and part of the wind resource assessment and, the RE projects. Yeah.
That's very interesting.
Yeah. I was also, heading the Department of Wind Resource Assessment nearly 5 years, and also initiated the wind forecasting services for our country, and also, developed level. Thank you.
So, due to some reason, I could not hear you well. Maybe.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Can you hear me
Because
now?
the video. Yeah. So, as per the program, we will. I think we can go with Matthias because Mark Kelly hasn't joined as yet. Welcome.
Okay. So just some few words on our company. Well, founded in 2011, we offer bankable accredited wind consulting services as well as calibration service for anemometers and wind vanes as well as barometers. We also have an online shop which has become some sort of reference in the wind industry, which is very interesting. So if you're looking for sensors, just have a look in our online store. Some of the services we offer as accredited services are
GIS mapping, turbulence analysis, etc. I'm not sure if you can still hear me because I think my microphone just died. The standards
you can see there, MESNET procedures, the IEC standards, as well as German technical guideline, which also used worldwide for wind resource assessment. Some of the accreditations, or all of the accreditations we have. Well, as I already introduced myself, I will skip that slide and come directly to the agenda for today. So basically 3 points. First of all, motivation. Why do a post-constructive energy yield assessment or annual energy prediction, and how to do it, and what is the potential that can be unlocked here in terms of additional production that you might have in the wind farm. Well, motivation. A very common situation that we have when we construct a wind farm and we have it in production is that during the first years, everything looks good. So on the right side, you find the predicted production, the red line, and the real production, the blue line. So everything looks good. Some years are better than the predicted production. Some years are worse. So in the first years, everything looks good. And that also means that the management of the wind farm does not need the necessity to have a closer look into the performance. But then it could happen, and that's most of the clients that approach us for this type of service, that after X years, in this case 6 years, you have a continuous lower production than predicted. And here, of course, urgent actions are needed because it could be that the pre-constructive annual energy prediction was too low. It could be that that there are some failures in the turbine, failures in the machines that need to be attended, or whatever. And that's where we step in with SCADA data analysis on the of the wind farm. So underlying question is if the long-term prediction of the AEP is still valid, or if it needs to be adapted, and also the economics need to be adapted, not to run into bankruptcy with the wind farm. Now, what we use as input data for such analysis are basically the 10-minute production data from the SCADA. I just put some screenshots here of real live SCADA data production on the right-hand side, as well as alarm logs on the left side. So we have 10 minutes production data in the best case, then alarm logs. So temperature of oil in some of the components, regular shutdown due to maintenance, etc., etc. And then as a secondary source, also production reports and service reports. We do use those, but those are not our primary source of information, as we really work with the SCADA data and try to find out what is the reason of lower production. Now, what you get then in the end is 6 different type of losses. Of course, you have the wake and blockage losses. Those are very hard to be influenced. Well, you cannot influence them because you cannot just drop down or dismantle a wind farm that is close to your site just because it's causing too much wake and too much losses. So basically, those losses are inherent in the data, and it's very important to have those losses also assessed in the correct way upfront, because this is one of the biggest source of errors in the pre-constructive assessment, the wrong calculation of wake losses. Then we have the available losses, which are basically availability of the wind turbines themselves, the electrical infrastructure, as well as the grid availability. Normally, those losses do not play or do not cause a big headache because they are well understood and they are also easy to deal with. So if you have a right operation and maintenance concept, you can do it in-house. Or if you don't want to do it in-house, you can contract a specialized company, and they will take care of the availability of the maintenance and the operation of the wind farm. And as in their contracts, they get penalized in case the availability or the agreed availability is not reached. They get fined. So this risk is something you can easily outsource. Now we come to the most interesting part, which are the turbine performance losses. And here is a large potential to improve operation of wind farms. As it says, we have a large potential, but it's quite difficult to detect and to quantify. We're doing it more and more often on operating wind farms, but it's a tough job. So you can have degradation of the turbines. You can have degradation of the performance due to tear and wear of the components. You can have dirty blades, for example, which is a case in Northern Africa, in Egypt, for example, that is a big issue. You can have yaw misalignment that is very common in most of the wind farms we have been working in. I will show an example later on. So here's a large potential for improvement. Then you have other losses, which are environmental losses, shutdown due to icing, shutdown due to higher temperature, site availability, etc. Those are very difficult to well, you can improve the production of the wind farm, but normally larger investments are needed. So if you bought, let's say, the wrong turbine that always shuts down above or reduces its power production above 25 degrees Celsius, and you are at a site where in summer you have 30 degrees or 35 degrees constantly, and of course you bought the wrong turbine, and that is something very difficult to deal with unless you do a very large investment. And then as a last source of losses, you have the curtailment losses, wind sector management to reduce fatigue loads due to wakes, for example, grid curtailment, etc. Those losses also are needed to be assessed correctly upfront, because it's very hard to correct those, or to improve the performance of the wind farm afterwards. Just an example, if the grid is not strong enough to take all the energy that is produced in a wind farm, you need to improve the grid, and that is normally the grid operator who is responsible for that. And it's not always the case that they have an interest to improve the grid capacity. So those losses are very difficult to improve. Okay, typical analysis. So what we are looking for. What we normally do is power performance plots. You see that on the left side. And there you find, for example, some power reductions. Put those here in with red circles. And now the question is, why is it happening? Is it because of grid outage, grid curtailment? Is it due to contractual limitation because there are some housings close by? Is it only in a certain sector of when the wind is blowing, let's say from the south, but never it never happens when the wind is blowing from the north, etc. Typically, you have also these losses at the lower end, which are normally due to service and maintenance, but there can also be some potential for improvements in case those service and maintenance are planned in a wrong manner. Let's say you have a high wind season, and in this case there was only 1 point at 5, 10, 15, at 20 meters per second. Obviously, it would have been better to do a shutdown at lower winds and not at these high winds. So in this case, we were quite good, but of course, in some wind farms, you have a lot of times when you have high winds, but the wind turbines are not producing. So you would need to have a closer look into your operation and maintenance concept. What we also see a lot, and that you can see on the right-hand side, is yaw misalignment. This is an extreme case where you have a difference in the orientation of the wind farm, close by wind turbines of 150 degrees. So what you normally do is, one of the possibilities what you can do is, you take adjacent wind turbines which are close to each other and then compare where they are oriented. Question then is if it's really the geographical orientation or if it's just an internal orientation of the wind turbine. I think in this case it was an internal orientation of the wind turbine, so it did not represent the real orientation geographically by the turbines. Nevertheless, in the end, the yaw misalignment between those turbines was still, I think it was 25, 30 degrees. So there was a potential for improvement as well. Just a side note, all these data we take directly from SCADA. So normally it's not necessary to add any additional sensors like Nessel-mounted LiDARs or something like this. Everything is based on SCADA data. Another type of analysis, or another another outcome of such analysis could be wind index. So we look how good or how representative the period in which the wind farm was producing is for the long term. So on the left-hand side, you can see 20 years long-term wind speed moving average, and in blue you find the production period of the wind farm, and there you can see that there was quite good wind above the average. And question is then how good the production was. You can also do long-term or a readjusted long-term production based on reanalysis data. In this case, it was ERA5, and then you do some simulations on the wind farm production based again on the SCADA data, though, so it's not the data from the measurement mast together with flow model, but directly taken from the SCADA data, and then you get a range of productions which are likely to happen. So to summarize, post-constructive SCADA data analysis can untap an improvement on wind farms, even though those are not visible at a first glance, and that is very important to underline here. What we hardly see is that any client approach us at the first or the second year of operation, but at the, let's say, 50 years or 60 years or even 10 years after the wind farm was constructed, because suddenly the energy production is dropping down. So question is, has it been because of higher winds during the first years and then normal winds in 6 years onwards? Or if the pre-constructive assessment was done the correct way? But we recommend to do it in the first years also. It's not a very costly analysis, so we take 5 to 10 days to do such type of analysis, but normally it's worth doing so. From the projects we have done, we have seen that the wind farm production could be increased between 0 and 10%. 0% obviously if the annual energy production has been predicted the correct way, and if the operation and maintenance concept is very good, if the turbines are of high quality, but up to 10% if you have a lot of yaw misalignments, if you always have interactions with the turbine during the high wind season, etc., etc. And what I said earlier, we recommend early actions even if the wind farm shows satisfactory production. And what is also possible is to incorporate the SCADA data output into a continuous external monitoring process. So in that case, we take the data, we continuously feed them into the database and produce the plots that I just showed and the analysis I just showed on a rolling basis. So in case you see some drift in the orientation of the different wind turbines, we can early detect that. Some of these analyses are of course incorporated into the SCADA data, so you can plot them in the with the software that you get from the manufacturer. But in some cases, it just happens that no one is looking at it. So that is basically where we come in and assure that someone looks on a daily or on a weekly basis on the production of the wind farm and what is going on in the wind farm. That's it. In case of questions, please go ahead.
Thank you, Matthias. Interesting presentation. And I think people can ask questions later because just now Mr. Mark Kelly has also joined, and we can have some discussion given the time is available on these aspects. So, Mr. Mark Kelly, can you now also introduce yourself? Mark?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes. Hi. My name is Mark Kelly. I've been working, to introduce myself, I've been working at the Danish Technical University for more than 13 years. And I am one of the WASP developers as well, but I came from large eddy simulation, theoretical turbulence, as well as meteorology. And I've been working with wind resource assessment for about 15 years, ranging from advanced CFD to engineering models, probabilistic models, and particularly stability, turbulence, and shear, as well as uncertainty stuff for the IEC.
Do you have a presentation, or we just
Yes, I can
discuss.
share if you like. Yeah, I'll just share my screen. So, yes.
Yeah,
Sorry about the delay. I had my calendar set for 2:30 our local time. I think we're ahead of schedule, it seems.
I think
So
there was a 5 minute or something. That was all.
hopefully this works okay. Let me know if you can see it.
Do you have share rights? You can share.
Okay. Does it allow presenter view, or should I just share?
You can share. You can
Let's
plug.
try this.
You can click on the share button at the bottom.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then, can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Okay. And it's the full screen, not with notes. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I've been working with both WASP and resource assessment since before I was at DTU, which is where WASP was made as well, and working with Bayesian and other probabilistic stuff. So there's been a natural progression from wind resource assessment, which is a probabilistic endeavor, wind statistics, moving from that towards uncertainty, and I'll be talking a bit about that today. So yeah, I mean, first I can give background. Probably this depends on the audience here, but this is something that I think everyone here probably knows, right? The context, right? The simple classic problem of trying to derive estimates of production, pre-construction estimates of production based on measurements. And the classic problem, of course, is that your observations are not at the site where you want a turbine, right? And more so that there's different, say, roughnesses. You have classes here. Different roughness classes, say offshore and different areas where you may have measurements, but you can't necessarily interpolate between measurements because the mean wind speed in a given direction, obviously is changing based on local terrain effects. Classically, as well as nowadays, can we not only not just do simple spatial interpolation of sorts, we need physical modeling, but of course the anemometers are lower than hub height. So this is the background, right? I think everyone's probably familiar with this. So this led to the development of what I call the first generation of wind resource assessment and the so-called European Wind Atlas methodology. And this really is the background, the context for bankable wind resource assessment. This became the standard in wind resource assessment. And what is it? Well, most of the wind industry used it for a couple decades, but what it is linearized microscale models combined with the geostrophic drag law. And what does that entail? It's kind of been forgotten what that entails. That is, we have linearized microscale models that deal with estimating the speed up or speed down effects of hills separately from roughness changes and separately from obstacles in the old days. We don't much deal with obstacles anymore, having taller masts and taller turbines. And visually set, this is the classic picture going all the way back to the late 80s when the European Wind Atlas was made of what a depiction of what this looks like. If we have observed wind statistics, starting, for example, with Weibull A and K parameters in a given wind direction, we can then use linearized models to remove roughness change effects and remove hill speed up effects using linearized models. And when we do that, that allows us, knowing a background roughness length, that allows us to use the geostrophic drag law in order to, after we've so-called cleaned the data of the local effects, it allows us to use the GDL, geostrophic drag law, to estimate the effective wind climate or geostrophic statistics in each wind direction in a long-term sense. And then using that information, we can, if we're looking at a potential wind turbine site that is close enough nearby such that the geostrophic wind is not much different. So this can range from a few kilometers to over 10 or even 20 kilometers in Denmark, but this depends. Then we can use that information and then go back down and apply the wind statistics using the geostrophic drag line reverse at the prediction sites, and then add the local effects back in there after doing so. And that's basically what was shown here. And this is something that many people have done over and over again using WASP. This is what it's made of. After that sort of standard method was made, then of course, so-called PARC model, a Franzen model came in where Jensen model came in where wake effects were predicted for production. And then of course, long-term correction was needed to account for yearly variations. And this is the background of what's in WindFarmer and WindPro and things like this that have the so-called WASP engine. To put it another way, for the last decade, the basic methodology, and some terms may differ from market to market, for getting wind resource assessment, or sometimes this is called energy yield assessment, right? It involves observational driven estimates again, starting with long-term extrapolation, that is long-term correction based on when the statistics were measured at a given site to obtain site wind climate. And that's traditionally that was Weibull statistics, but now histograms sometimes are used, although histograms can be problematic when dealing with modeling them. And then of course the different physical aspects, vertically extrapolating upward from measurement heights to turbine hub heights to get a reference yield, and then horizontal extrapolation. And these two parts, they can be combined or they can be separate. Traditionally, they've been separate, but as I'll get to in a little bit, they can be combined in like CFD, computational fluid dynamics. Anyway, this is probably something not new for all of you. It's a reminder of the different steps that are involved in getting the project yield or estimated energy yield for a farm, and then say getting P50 or even P75, as well as a little hint that we'll be doing uncertainty modeling for the sake of planning. Reminder of resource assessment limitations, even in standard use. When we have linearized type models to deal with hills and or roughness changes and things like that, it means we have that we have linearized, like summing up the different effects, and so that the effects are assumed to not interact with each other, nor with stability either. Of course, this became a problem over complex terrain and over forests, and so that's kind of invoked a change in the modeling. But before we get to that, though, there's been changes, of course, in wind energy. It's been growing. The turbines have been growing, and this has led to a need for changes in the modeling. So thankfully, models such as WASP kind of were able to incorporate some of this. So turbines used to be, short ones, they used to be pretty much contained within the surface layer most of the time during most seasons in most of the world. And as they've grown above the surface layer, which means that our classic physics are starting to fail. They're now hub heights, or most of the rotor is often above the atmospheric surface layer. So then it means that for part of the day or part seasons, stability effects are not important. Other parts of the time, they are important. And surface layer theory can't be used the same way unless it's particularly bent, as one can say, as is done in some models such as WASP. And so this necessitated the use more and more so of say, mesoscale models or CFD. Speaking of which, another aspect of the growth of wind energy, of course, has been the growth of having different models and available data sets. So mesoscale models and wind atlases that come from them, including, for example, in our neighbor, the Global Wind Atlas or New European Wind Atlas. There's a picture of that there, here for global reanalysis data sets, of course, have been a big thing and evolved. Now we have MERA and ERA Interim, now ERA 5, MERA, CFSR, among others. And their primary application, of course, has been long-term correction because they're nice long data sets, and they've tended to be in the past too crude for dealing with site assessment, resource assessment in particular. But that is growing. Now, what has been a secondary application for them has been to drive microscale models, that is, and for wind resource assessment. However, to use mesoscale model output as a quote virtual MetMast, this involves often needing to do some downscaling. In other words, to remove the terrain-induced effects that the mesoscale model actually is getting in order to add them in with the microscale model. So to use the mesoscale model in order to drive microscale flow models, then one has to do an extra processing step in between. And that adds uncertainty. Using the mesoscale model itself involves a lot of uncertainty. The wind energy industry has also been growing to deal with complex terrain. So we've had RAN solvers. Here's an example of the Boland experiment. This is all the way back 10 years ago now, of many different CFD models, RANs in particular, all these blue colors, light blue colors, and green. That's different users, on the order of 50 users for a plateau in water, like a peninsula, modeling the flow over a peninsula. So there's a lot of variation, even in the use of more sophisticated models based on user knowledge and experience and setup. And there's limitations to these models. They're still mostly, when there's hills or forests, these models mostly are still only doing neutral stability. Wakes, however, now are also starting to incorporate stability. Work from Paul Fenderlon and myself here have gotten that. Blockage was mentioned, so I'm going to just go past this already. So the wind farm parameterizations, offshore implementation have grown, and the wake modeling has gone more sophisticated. So has now the hot topic of blockage. However, blockage is not that big compared to other things. However, it still can be quite costly because of really large wind farms. A 1% difference is quite a lot. And I will say along the way, as a hint to y'all, because I have dealt with large eddy simulation for almost 2 decades, as well as RANs, as well as linearized modeling and wind resource assessment, one thing I can tell you is that the most sophisticated models are not necessarily better. Large eddy simulation is still too expensive for such things. And in some cases, such as with blockage, the most sophisticated model, which is not bankable because it's a research model, large eddy simulation, that can't be used for blockage due to its relatively small effect and due to the unsteadiness of LES. Anyway, that's just an aside. What we want to do in wind resource assessment is we've been wanting to make bankable wind energy projects, right? And so bankable had been to use a sort of standard procedure, as has been kind of outlined here, this kind of WASP type thing. But more and more, the cost of projects has become tied to the risk. That is, the loans, the cost of loans and financing is tied to the perceived risk or the uncertainty in these projects. And so not only has that been really driving wind energy for about a decade, especially in the West, but the more advanced models and higher turbines and such require a little bit more quoting of uncertainty, because even though there are sophisticated tools that are supposed to help, they can actually they can make more uncertainty. And so this means that reporting has become a key thing. And the banks and such look for this as well. And this has pushed us towards a standard, actually. So we go from wind resource assessment to reporting what we're doing. Here's an example of CFD reporting checklist or mesoscale reporting checklist, which drives us towards not only listing all the model choices we make, but what are the parameters that we use and what are the uncertainties in the primary inputs. We use maps, we use wind inputs, and we use turbine power curves, right? Those are the most primary things we use, and they all have uncertainty in them. And so the inputs, as listed here, this is an example from WASP, which we've done here. There's parameters and inputs. The inputs really drive the uncertainty, along with how well the models do, and the models need to be validated. This is an example WASP. People think WASP is quite simple, but when you actually break it apart, there's a lot of different pieces. And then when you go even further towards actual resource assessment in the industry, well, it's beyond just what the WASP model has, right? There's long-term correction, and then there's many different aspects. So an uncertainty standard has emerged since 2013. We've been working on it, the -15, which has been split into the -15.1 on site suitability and -15.2, which is the uncertainty framework. And it's become a lot about reporting, but more so its basis is in estimating the uncertainty of every submodel that's used in wind resource assessment, and in particular estimating the uncertainty in the inputs that drive these submodels. So for example, wind measurement uncertainty, and it itself has subcomponents, some of the main ones of which are listed here. And so there's different uncertainty categories or subcomponents, you could say, which need to be combined to get wind speed uncertainty in wind resource assessment. And these themselves are in the process of getting validated. The end result is, this is actually a piece of the spreadsheet, the coming IEC standard, where we actually have a calculation framework and sum up given user input of measurement uncertainties and a whole list of other uncertainties based on modeling choices that are made. We calculate the total uncertainty, and it can be for one mast or more than one measurement mast driven by that. And again, these are motivated by and involve both justification, or you could say pre-validation, of basically industry-wide uncertainty modeling, like involving this old EDF project variance versus pre-construction uncertainty estimates. This gives us a range, as well as, like in this case, example of the vertical extrapolation uncertainty and uncertainty model, which is part of the upcoming standard for shear extrapolation in this case, showing the validation of uncertainty estimates minus the actual errors across 80 projects. Yeah, so I think I talked a little longer, sorry. But this is basically what we have now. I should ask you all if there are any questions. I tried to take 5 slides out.
Yeah. So thanks, Mark, and interesting presentation, and also you laid out the entire process of the WRA, the different steps. That was also nice and will be useful for many people who are looking at and don't know so much about wind resource assessment. We'll come to the questions and discussion, because time is flying. I'll ask Mr. Bhupati to make his presentation, and then probably we can have a Mr. Shrestha is also there. We can have a discussion in the end, right? So
Sure.
Sure, Mark. So you will also be available at through the thing. Bhupati, do you have a presentation? Yeah.
Yeah, yes, sir. I have the presentation.
Yeah. Please go ahead.
One moment. Yeah, can you see my presentation?
Yeah. But try to make it a little swiftly, because we have
Yeah. Okay.
little time. Yeah.
Right, sir. Hi, good evening and good afternoon to others. So I'm very happy to be here today to give a presentation on wind energy resource potential in India. Yes, I have given already, the introduction. So, that India has brushed with, many many variable resources like the solar, wind, and the biomass hydropower. And that India has already assessed many of the resources, and it has been widely used and developed for the energy requirement of our country. And some of other resources are, it is, for the potential development. So it will be done later. So since he has asked me to go quickly, so just I will go quickly. Yes, yeah. So that I do not want to go for much about this one, that the wind resource, that how much it's important for pre-feasibility study and various other studies for even for the wind energy developers. They need for purely for how much energy which contains in the wind. So that's the thing. And also the wind resource is with a basic step for developing your wind farm and annual energy yield estimation. Yes, so just I would like to say a few words about the wind mapping, because my topic is the wind resources, wind resource. So, the India has, the National Institute of Wind Energy and the Ministry of New and Renewable Energy has involved in preparation of the wind potential map frequently. and cope up with the increasing heights of the wind turbine. So in 2004, you might not have seen, I have not brought it here. And in 2004, we prepared the wind atlas, the wind potential map at 50-meter height. In 2004, we estimated the potential at 49 gigawatt. So that 49 gigawatt based on 12 hectares per megawatt. So based on the assumption, we prepared at 49 gigawatt we estimated. And in 2010, so after in 2004 and 2010, we associated with DTU Denmark. We prepared and we developed the wind atlas at 50-meter height. This is the 50-meter height and 80-meter height. And the 50-meter height again, based on the mesoscale, Karsley mesoscale model at every 5 kilometer by 5 kilometer resolution. We estimated the potential at 50-meter height. It is a 49 gigawatt again, and 80-meter height and 50-meter height. It has been validated with the existing data sets. And 80-meter height, okay, the 80-meter height it has not been validated. The estimated potential was 103 gigawatt. And even for 50-meter also, we estimate. It has been validated with the most. Some other states like the northeastern state and the Lakshadweep Islands and Lakshadweep Islands, Andaman Nicobar Islands. Those islands have not been validated those time, because those time we did not have the much data for this. And Dr. Jam mentioned, he know that we associated with to estimate the potential at 100-meter height. So we estimated the potential at 100-meter height with the various assumption of the various assumption, and we estimated the potential at 302 gigawatt. In 2015, it was released by our honorable minister at the time. And in 2016 also, we released the map at 20 meter. This is a very raw wind map. And the raw wind map, and the 2020 and 19 and 20, we prepared and released the map of 120-meter height. Then I said, the 120-meter height, the estimated potential is at 695 gigawatt. So this potential is an indicative potential. We cannot use this potential for direct development of our wind farm. So this is the indicative potential. The mostly the potential which is available in the western coastlines, mostly the 7 windy states like the Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh, Karnataka, Gujarat, Maharashtra, Rajasthan, and Madhya Pradesh. So these are the state we have. There is a very good wind potential, and also the development also has been there in those states. Yeah. Yes. So this data sets, okay, so this wind atlas map, wind atlas map has been used for various purposes, like for target setting. The government of India has set already the target for 2022 by 60 gigawatt. And for 2030, it has already been set a target for 140 gigawatt from the wind. So based on the resource assessment, the resource, and they set, and also it has been used for the policy making. The government of India has made the policies and the guidelines based on this one. And also the the Power Grid Corporation of India Limited has based on the resource, they identified the way and where they can place the substation and for the transmission line evacuation, and various study has been made it. And also this data sets, the main motivation is to give the prospecting for the developers, those who want the research also. They can use this data sets for where they can develop, where they can do the research. And also for the wind integration studies and the various other studies have been utilized for this wind resource
We
assessment
are
map.
having some voice
Voice is
disturbance.
breaking. Yeah.
Somebody is not keeping his mic on mute. So please do it on mute, because somewhere the voice is coming.
Is it okay, sir? My voice is okay.
Sir, Bhupesh sir is background noise, sir.
Yeah, whether it is okay, my voice is okay.
Sir, your voice is okay, but some noise your background.
Yeah. So sorry, sir. Yeah, I'm sitting in the airport. So sorry. So sometimes it may come. So please bear it, sir. Yeah. Right, sir. Yeah, in the wind atlas map. So this is the map what we prepared in both the 100 meter and 120 meter. So these are the methodology we followed. So actually we received the model data from the various resources, the weather research forecasting data sets. And also, based on the data set, every 500 meter by 500 meter resolution data sets we received for both the 100 meter as well as the 120 meter level wind atlas preparation. And we have the measurement data about 100 meter and 120 meter level, even for both 100 meter level. Also, we extrapolated for the 120 meter level. We used the land use land cover map from the NRSC, that is a 50 meter resolution, and recently the 25 meter resolution data sets also we received. And also we used for the various restricted data sets, the airport, and for restricted place, we take the data from the government of national, the national natural resource management system. So those data sets have been used, and also and identified the potential area, which are the areas have been we can use for the potential development of a wind farm. And also, the NRSC data set, national remote sensing data sets, we have grouped into 3 farms. There are 19 classifications are there, and based on this one, we have grouped into 3 sets. No, that is the first. The group is the wasteland. That wasteland which gives where is the grassland is there, and other wasteland and scrubland and rand. So these are all called, we have taken in the one group, and the second group is the cultivable land. Where is the kharif, rabi, and zaid, and triple, and the current flow. And the forest land we used for the plantation, orchid. So these are the classification we have made it. So based on the classification, we have we have assessed the potentials. So we have assessed the potential, right? So this is the potential, that all over the country, the state, the various state. So the number one state, the potential which has the Gujarat. Gujarat state has at 120 meter level. Almost the 140 gigawatt we have it, 140 gigawatt. And next is the Karnataka, we have 124 gigawatt. Next, all other state we have it. But the Tamil Nadu, even the Tamil Nadu has the potential, the estimated installable potential is 68,070 megawatt. But the installed capacity has reached is 9,500 megawatt in the state. Yes, yeah. Yes, yeah. And also, the wind resource assessment, the efforts what the National Institute of Wind Energy has taken. So just to the left side of the graph, you can see that the Google Earth. So we have established 968 wind monitoring stations across the country. So currently, yeah, this the number has changed. So instead of 3, it's 8. So 33 stations are currently in operation in the various states, and also the published the various volumes of the book. In our this information which is available in our country. So this is the new thing what we have initiated for the wind resource, for the integrated wind solar resource map. So the integrated wind solar map, our aim is that because the government of India has already issued the guidelines for wind solar hybrid system. For this wind solar hybrid system, both the wind map and as well as the solar map, we have combined it together, which gives the information about the where you can develop most probable state, but the map has not yet been released. So this map, you can see the downside, you can see also the potential, the most suitability, okay, the percentage of suitability. And most of the windy location, which are the percentage of suitability is a 50 to 60% of the suitability of this location. And the green energy location has, at the 40 to 50%, and the green, the region where we have the orange color, which has the region where we have that is a 60 to 70%, because of both wind and solar, the complementary to each other. And the red color region, so mostly only the location where we have the Kashmir and Jammu and the Kashmir region, it is greater than 70% is possible to develop the wind and the solar. So this, as we have adopted the various methodology for bringing this potential map. So the potential map released very soon. For validating this resource, also we have the India has already installed the 125 locations the solar resource assessment, and wind resource we have the more than 968 locations. And apart from this also, and for the wind and the solar resource assessment combined in the single MetMast, the initially we did it for 25 locations, and for another 25 locations it is under progress for the next one. And also for geotagging, the geotagging for the for the repository, data repository, in order to make it, because initially it was not there. And then Government of India has initiated this process. Currently we assessed 30,000 locations where the wind turbines are there, various information, static information we received. And also, currently associated with the SECI, Solar Energy Corporation of India has, already issued the guidelines. So those who want to install the wind turbine anywhere in India, initially they have to get the number from the National Institute of Wind Energy, because the National Institute of Wind Energy, store the data where they are installing. Even if there is any modification also, we receive the data set. The map is in our state. And also the Government of India has, made the greening the island. So for Andaman Nicobar, the 100% greening the island, because, the islands, completely they are using the wind, the diesel fuels. So in order to reduce the diesel fuels and reduce the carbon emission, the government has initiated various activities for this one. And we are moving towards to make the island green for various wind and solar potential, and as well as the biomass potential. So this is, the initially just, for various studies we have made it. And also then we are planning to put the wind in either near shore in Andaman Nicobar Islands. So the work is, under progress. And also, the Government of India has initiated the carbon neutral in Ladakh region. So initially it was, the government has initially, issued, initially said, we want to go for 30 gigawatt. But currently it is a 10 gigawatt in the pipeline. So we also assess the land at various locations. Some stretch lands are there. And also, some of the location, the wind potential is there. But initiating the wind potential and assessment and for solar potential, already we assessed that 4 locations for wind and 2 locations for solar potential. And also Government of India has, announced in Gujarat region, Khavda region, so 30 gigawatt. So 30 gigawatt, we have to assess this region for only this particular region for the wind park. So in this region, for Government of India has allotted for SECI Solar Energy Corporation of India for 23,000 hectares of the land. So we also assess the various models, and we can reach up to near to 30 gigawatt. We can reach these particular locations. And also the greening the port. So this also Government of India has initiated the greening the port. So initially for the Tuticorin Chennai port, and Chennai Ennur port, and as well as the Kandla port. So these are the port has the potential, and for to initiate the project, so greening the island, the Tuticorin. So we have initiated already the Tuticorin.
Upati, can you wind up quickly?
Yeah,
2 minutes.
I'll wind up, sir. 1 or 2 slides I'll wind up, sir. Yeah. So the greening the island, greening the port. So I will say a few words about the offshore, that I'll finish it, sir. Yeah. So, and also, Government of India has set the target for 5 gigawatt by 2022 for the offshore development, and 30 gigawatt by 2030. So in order to achieve this one, we have done that's a various study for the offshore, both Gujarat as well as the Tamil Nadu. So Gujarat, Gujarat we have estimated 30 gigawatt, and as well as Tamil Nadu also we estimated the 30 gigawatt of a different zone classification. And we have also, expression of interest. We expression of interest we called, and out of this, 35 participants, participated for the expression of interest. And the minister, supposed to hold the meeting for the last week for the block leasing. Offshore wind block leasing. And so most probably then next week it may happen. And after that we will provide the complete guidelines, and also Government of India has given the draft leasing guidelines also. In this, has done, each potential customers can get in 100 to 500 square kilometer area. And for leasing, for every square kilometer, they have to pay for the 1 lakh rupees. So that is there. So both the Tamil Nadu and Gujarat is there. And now currently we are moving for the offshore potential. So this is the Dhanushkodi region. So Dhanushkodi regions also in the Government of India has given land demarcation for approval, land demarcation approval, and the design of layout for beds for testing of the wind turbine. And so first the near shore wind turbine, we want to bring it there. The work is in progress. Yeah, that's all, sir. Then if you have any question, then later we will do it. Yeah. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Yeah, any question, then we can have it during the question and answer session. Yeah. Sir, your voice is, you are muted.
Yeah. So thank you very much, Bhupati. And it was a very, very comprehensive presentation about entire India. And as far as I know, you have set up nearly 1,000 or 1,100 wind masts all over the country. How many wind masts have been set up?
Oh, 968, sir.
968. And also
Yes.
some lidars in the offshore region. So
Yes, sir. Yeah.
so that way, Nivea is doing an excellent job as a nodal agency in harnessing the wind energy. We will discuss about potential also because, as you know, I was also involved in the potential assessment exercises. And at the moment, I will ask Mr. Ajit Pillai. Is there? Yeah.
Yes.
So Ajit, as I understand, you're not going to make a presentation as such. Is that
No,
right?
I don't have a question.
Yeah.
I don't have a question.
So I will put a question to you, and which is also related to the previous presentations. Now, ReNew is operating something like 3,000 megawatt of wind power or 3,500 megawatt, very large capacity. And you must be internally assessing thoroughly all the uncertainties involved. So I assume that you have in some manner standardized the manner of uncertainties, which was also some discussion that Mark Kelly had towards the end of his presentation. The thing is that you cannot have one wind farm with one set of assumptions and one uncertainties and somewhere another wind farm. So nobody would have done it better than somebody who is operating such a large capacity. So would you like to say something on that?
Yeah, on the uncertainty part, what we do is, first of all, one problem we have find is on the underperformance of turbines. So manufacturer-wise, based on our database, we have created some kind of metrics for we look each and every technology in different way. If in our field some turbine is not performing, we consider more uncertainty towards that model. Similarly, we have a matrix based on the distance of the mast. So if our distance is high, then we increase the uncertainty accordingly. And third thing is we started using the mesoscale data along with the mast. So we run wind WRG maps on a larger scale, like 25 kilometer kind of thing. Then we do a correction with the local measurements. So that help us to reduce uncertainty. Typically, earlier days, the uncertainty used to be at 11-12%. Now it is reduced to 8-9%. So we have developed internal uncertainty methodology, which give due weightage to the technology, mast location, mast height, elevation difference, all those things.
So when you say that you have, standardized your uncertainty with respect to the technology, so one model or one manufacturer, you have one set of uncertainties, another manufacturer, another set of uncertainties. That is the way you generally apply it. But in your working, have you seen a very good correlation, say with turbine A, turbine B, of the uncertainties? Have you worked that out and you find a very good correlation between that? So how do you do this?
Yeah, so we have seen turbines which even perform 101% power performance.
Right. Yeah.
At the same time, we have seen turbines which not even reach 90%.
Yeah.
So with past experience, we forced to do that kind of uncertainty calculation.
Okay. Mr. Mark, would you like to say something on this? Mr. Kelly?
I just had to try to unmute there. Yeah, it's interesting what you mentioned, Ajit. I'm wondering. I guess we take it that when you mentioned the uncertainty estimates that you're calculating, you're finding that this must be. I assume it must be in non-simple terrain, or it's not offshore necessarily. So you're using the distance between mast and wind farm as a proxy for the horizontal extrapolation, or that's an indicator. because you have some sort of flow modeling of some sort, right? To estimate the resource at your location, of the turbines, right? Or were you referring to production-based estimates, or both?
Can you repeat that question?
So yeah, it's a couple of things put together. Were you referring to production-based uncertainty estimates and validation, and or pre-construction estimates as well? And the other question aspect is, did you identify this primary metric of distance between turbine site and met mast? Distance, did you identify that as just a primary metric among many others? Because it is one that shows up in the uncertainty framework. So it's kind of 2 or 3 questions I asked. Sorry.
So distance-based uncertainty, we have multiple mass, so we do a cross prediction, and based on the cross prediction error, we accordingly we will put the uncertainty. If all the mass are well correlated, then uncertainty will be very low.
Right, and yeah, so one thing that you might be interested in hearing is, in order to reward those who are using extra masts or the information that comes from them, the less correlated the masts are from each other, right? The more unique information they can provide. And so the current uncertainty framework in the emerging standard includes that. And so I imagine that you have the distance part, but then you also have to scale that contribution by the number of turbines with each mast, or how you combine them, as well as how correlated the masts are from each other. I suppose you use the correlations themselves as well in your prediction, or no?
Typically for a 300 megawatt project, we usually put the 6 to 7 met mast.
Wow, okay, so 6 to 7 met masts, and then you use them, so
Yes,
this must be in complex terrain, I guess.
And same time now we started using the mesoscale data, mesoscale WRGs to, and when you localize that with the met mass, so that reduce uncertainty to some certain level.
Right,
Okay,
so yeah.
We have one more presenter, Mr. Shrestha. Mr. Shrestha, would you like to introduce yourself, and then we will then carry on the discussion, Mark, later on, because the gentleman also has to. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So yeah. So Mr. Shrestha, please.
It's a very good evening from Kathmandu. I am Sajan Shrestha. I'm currently a PhD scholar at Center Department of Physics, Tribhuvan University. And I'm working primarily in the field of numerical weather forecasting and data assimilation, and also in the wind energy implications. So should I share my presentation now?
Please go ahead.
Very good evening. In this presentation, I would like to briefly present the wind energy potential and some challenges in harnessing the wind power in one of the windiest places in Nepal, the Kaligandaki River Valley. In today's scenario, where global warming and climate change has become a burning issue, the need of alternative source of energy has become even more evident. The energy that is clean, renewable, sustainable, efficient, and economical, and can efficiently fulfill our needs, and yet leaves the least carbon footprints to the environment, and wind energy is one of them. Even in the remotest region of the world, which is yet to be electrified, wind power could be the very first source of electricity, provided they have a good wind resource. Nepal is a mountainous country intercepting the large portion of Himalaya range, running west to east in the northern part of the country. South to the Himalaya, there is a hilly range that extends to vast Indo-Gangetic plain in the south. The sharp gradient of terrain elevation here helps to develop high-speed regional mountain wind system Moreover, the number of mountain passes, valleys, and gorges, etc., interacts with the synoptic and regional wind, enhancing the wind speed and creating a good region of wind energy here. Some of the previous studies suggested that Nepal has a potential as much as 3,000 megawatts of wind power, considering only the 10% of the area, with a wind power density more than 300 watt per square meter. It's clear from the figure that most of the high wind power potential area lies in the mountainous region. The encircled area containing the Mustang and other districts have been identified as the most potential sites with a high wind energy. The 50-meter AGL wind power density map of Nepal by Global Wind Atlas also suggests the same thing, with wind power density 500 watt per square meter and above. Here we study the wind resources and possibility of harnessing wind energy over the Kali Gandaki Valley, covering the 69 kilometer by 69 kilometer area. The valley is about 100 kilometers long and is shaped by Kali Gandaki River that originates from Mustang Himal near Tibet and flows through the valley along its axis. The valley narrows as it extends southwest from the wide region of Lomanthang near Tibetan Plateau. The Kali Gandaki crosses mighty Himalaya near Leyte, where it makes a deep gorge of more than 5,000 meter deep between Mount Dhaulagiri and Annapurna, making it the deepest river gorge in the world. One of the very first challenges of harnessing wind energy over such a complex terrain is determining the actual potential over the region. We performed a one-year-long numerical simulation of wind system over the area with a weather resource and forecasting model at high resolution of 1 kilometer by 1 kilometer. We had our hands on 3-day meteorological data, which we compared with our warp simulation, and the result is highly encouraging, suggesting that our forecast is dependable. The diurnal variation of spatial distribution of wind at 30-meter AGL presented in animation shows a persistent flow of high wind speed with a speed more than 10 meters per second, covering whole valley and prevailing for around 10 hours a day from around 10:45 to 21:45 LST, almost in the same direction and attaining maximum wind speed up to 20 meters per second during the midday. The monthly wind variation of average wind power density shows that the wind power within the valley increases from January to June and then gradually decreases again till December, with maximum power density ranging from 400 to 900 watt per square meter and persistent for 7 months from April to October. These excellent to super class wind densities may be suitably utilized for significant power generation. The annual average wind power density shows that the areas like Jomsong, Chusang, Marfa possesses the wind power density of more than 500 watt per square meter throughout the year. Considering the annual average, theoretically, we could generate up to 1,088 megawatt of wind power from the region. Very encouraging, though the wind resources or the region is, its exploitation is equally challenging. What finally extracts energy from wind is the wind turbine. A suitable site, besides having a good wind, a wind farm should be easily accessible, and the terrain features should support easy installation of turbine. Moreover, the wind turbine should not disrupt people, environment, and local heritages, and importantly, it should have the cost benefits. For finding the area suitable for the wind farm, we implied some geographic and economic restrictions presented in the relevant literatures, and it is done using GIS tools. Considering the availability of the road access, the study region above the 4,000 meters above mean sea level, terrain slopes above 30 degrees, and land area covered by forest, water bodies, snow and ice, an area in the 400-meter buffer zone of rivers, 2,500 meters around airport, and 1,000 meters around residential areas were considered unsuitable for wind farm siting. The analysis resulted only 650 square kilometers area of suitable area out of 4,761 square kilometer study area. On estimating the 50 commercial wind turbines of 30 meters hub height and 20 meter rotor diameter in every square kilometer and performing their power curve analysis and variable distribution analysis from the area, about 492 megawatt of wind power energy can be generated at 30 meter AGL. Attempts in the past has been made to harness the wind energy from the region. This is the picture of the very first wind turbine of 10 kilowatt out of the 2 installed in Kagbeni of Kaligandaki Valley in 1989. The turbine was unfortunately severely destroyed just 2 months after installation by a strong wind, and unfortunately it is the last one till the date. Wind there in the Kaligandaki Valley region is strong enough to blow small pebbles, and the speed as much as 46.7 meter per second has been recorded in the region. On looking into our work simulation, it is seen that over the Jomsom and Kagbeni region, wind occasionally experience hydraulic jump that is strong enough to disturb wind turbines. And it is an engineering challenge to build turbines strong enough to withstand such strong winds. So it is seen from the number of studies, including ours, that Kaligandaki Valley has a huge potential for wind energy, but harnessing it is a challenge due to difficult terrains and associated meteorology. A robust wind turbines would be necessary for wind farm siting in such region. And finally, a detailed meteorological analysis would be necessary for wind farm siting in such a complex terrain. Thank you very much. So.
Thank you, Shrestha. A very, very interesting presentation.
Thank
you, I really like the use of GIS that you have done and to figure out the potential areas. And I also tend to agree. So what you figure out in your analysis is that the areas more or less close to the valley, or
Right.
whether it is a river valley or in the adjoining areas, they are more suitable than the higher reaches.
Exactly, sir. Because the higher areas, more than 4,000 meters, are obviously inaccessible and should be removed from our suitable sites, because road accessibility and wind densities are very low in such regions. So for the commercial or off-grid purpose, such regions above 4,000 meters are obviously unsuitable.
Because when people think of harnessing wind energy in Himalayas, they think they have to climb mountains and take wind turbines there. So at least that cannot be true. So now we have this open session, and I welcome any questions that people may have from this discussion so far.
Yeah, I wonder if I could ask Sayan about.
Yes, Mark.
Yeah, that was pretty cool what you showed. I'm curious. I guess a couple things I'll narrow down. You had used WRF to get the hydraulic jump.
Right.
What? Yeah. So as you know, saying there's a hydraulic jump means that one has to assess the Froude number, and WRF has trouble maintaining pretty high Richardson numbers or even giving good stability statistics, well, at least depending on the PBL scheme. So I'm wondering two things. Which PBL scheme did you use, and how many vertical levels or spacing was it?
We normally use MYJ and YSU PBL schemes, and we have around 35 vertical levels with a top height at 100 hectopascals.
Okay, Yeah, it could be interesting if yeah, for example, if like we've found that if you have 70 levels or 50 levels vertically going up to, yeah, roughly 300 hectopascal, so that would
Right.
be 20% more levels for you. That the Richardson numbers change a lot, so the Froude number will change a lot. So it would be I'm curious as to see what kind of effects it would have on the predicted flow in this deep valley. Did you do any sort of sensitivity analysis and see how much the results changed?
We have tested a couple of times trying to increase the number of vertical levels in the wharf, but in such a complex terrain, increasing the vertical levels in the lower levels destabilizes the wharf, and increasing the vertical levels in the upper levels do not contribute much to the surface level winds. So
Right.
it was not just computational expense increasing the vertical level in the wharf in such systems.
Right. I guess
Right.
maybe you found, so as you might know, wharfs, especially in MYNN, the CFL criterion is wrong in the vertical. They didn't fix that. So when you get upslope flow enough, then it will crash. And
Right.
yeah, maybe you already dealt with that.
Exactly.
Thanks. I look forward to seeing more results there.
Sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
good.
I have a
Any
question.
question?
Yeah, I have a question. Yeah. Mr. Shajan, yeah, I have a question.
Yes.
So you have done the, assessment in the valleys. So what is
Right.
the valleys depth, and also is it possible to develop a wind farm on the valleys? Because it is a valleys completely. The valleys. Somewhere else we may have the land, right? And most of the
Right.
places we may not have it. And what is the depth in this one? And how we are going to develop the wind farm, and have you done any validation on these studies?
There have been previous attempts to develop the wind farm at the Kaligantik Valley, as I have shown in the slide that such attempts were just a failure because the winds were very strong to even dismantle the turbines. For the case of validation, we do not have such a strong instrumentations over the areas. So what we have got was a few days data of wind mast that we could validate with the wind speed and just a simple validation, not the power validation and others.
Okay. Because we have also identified some locations in Jammu and Kashmir.
Right.
So those locations we found the same thing. Also, it's a valley, so it's a very
Yeah.
good resource is there. But the thing is that the entire valley, the location for developing wind farm is very few.
Right.
Right, because so in between the valleys and it's very difficult. And in case if it goes to the exit path, we may have that's a good wind resource. But
Yes.
in the exit path, we have to check whether the wind resource is there or not.
Right, and most and importantly, in the such mountain terrains, due to the terrain effects, we could experience number of high wind speed flows, like hydraulic jumps and others, as I have mentioned in the case of the Kaligantik Valley. So detailed assessment would be necessary, not just a simple wind power density assessment, but detailed long-term meteorological assessment would be necessary to develop the wind farm in such regions.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And
Thank
the
you.
other thing in these kind of situations with complex terrain is that you may not be able to use ERA or MERA kind of data for the long-term assessment. So you actually do not have much knowledge about what is happening there in the long term.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And also, I mean, WRF is you have 7 kilometer effective resolution, right? WRF's advection scheme is such that at best you get 6 kilometers resolution. So the speed ups are really, they're really compromised a bit. So you need a microscale model.
Right.
So, Ajit, you are looking at any mountain regions for developing 100 megawatt wind farms?
First, we have to understand what is the policy in Nepal for putting a mast.
Okay. Yeah, but you
And
can
we
do
have
it in
seen
Ladakh
some
also.
requirement from Nepal.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Mr. Shrestha, what is the happening with regard to development? Because I heard that there was some 100 megawatt project being planned. Do you think this is happening there in Nepal? But there was not very clear information on that.
I don't think it's happening anytime soon because the government and others still do not have the very strong wind resource assessment informations that they could, or the places they have identified so that they could develop wind farm anywhere very soon. So I don't
Okay.
think it's going to be implemented
Okay,
in
thank you.
coming years. Thank you.
Matthias, you have to ask any question or say something about your presentation. That was interesting about the SCADA data being used to figure out, some of these things, particularly the low performance. And we have also looked at that. And sometimes unusual things are happening in wind turbine, and which can only come out of the SCADA analysis after it is working for maybe at least a year. And so that was an interesting presentation. Do you have anything else to say on that?
Right now, not. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And uh, Mark, any other question? Anybody else? Any question?
Yeah,
I have a question to Matthias.
yeah, I have one question with Mr. Matthews. Yes, yeah, for the SCADA data. So then, yeah, it's explained well. Everyone has explained well, and I'm really appreciated for this. And just I have questions. So, in case the wind turbine is not performing, which Rajit also was telling for the last 2 years, that is a different one. In case of the wind turbine which is not performing for the entire wind farm, so what methodology will adopt for evaluate those things? Just I want to know that.
You mean if one turbine is not performing, or
No,
if the whole wind
entire
farm?
entire wind farm is not performing, or some of the wind turbines are not performing. I mean, not expected level. It's a generation. It is there. So what methodology? Yeah.
Yeah, what we do is we try to find out if it's if the reason is because there's low wind resource. You have 2 bad years, for example, so you can't hardly do anything about it, or if you see some shift in the power curve. So in case you cannot reproduce the power curve, or if you see a shift in the power curve from one turbine to the other, or even compared to the guaranteed one, then of course you have a problem. If you see, for example, that at between 5 meters and 7 meters per second, you're continuously below the guaranteed one, then you have a problem. You have to take into account that the guaranteed one and the one you can get from the turbine itself with the nacelle-mounted anemometer, they cannot compare directly because you have the high influence of the wake on the anemometer and so on. But strong effects or large effects you can see on the output.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. So I would say that we have had some. Yeah.
I have
Any
an associated question. Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, what we have noticed is for some of the leading manufacturers, they supply derived wind speed through SCADA data. In that case, how do we analyze the production performance?
As the
leading
manufacturers,
manufacturers give, they consider the power value, and they say it's because of the rotor equivalent wind speed. They give a derived wind speed to leading manufacturers.
yeah, I mean there are some manufacturers that Yeah, they do some calculations and some corrections on the wind speed. So in the end, the wind speed does match with the power curve, or when the power curve that you get from the SCADA data does match with the guaranteed wind speed. That's true, but this is something. In the end, it's really hard to find out if that's true or not. What you could do then is you take the permanent mast that is inside the wind farm and make a correlation with one of the turbines that's close by to see if you can reproduce what is measured on the permanent mast, and then, for example, use a flow model to find out if the wind speed that is given by the SCADA is close to what it should be. But what is done in the SCADA data by the manufacturers, that is really hard to tell. Same for power performance measurement. If you do a power performance measurement and suddenly the technical guys plug in the USB, which says very obvious settings for power performance measurement, then you know they do something on the turbine to make the power performance measurement go the right way. And then after the power performance measurement, they just switch it back to normal mode. So yeah, that is something that is really hard to detect. But if you can see, for example, with the wind index, that your turbine or your wind farm should produce as expected by the pre-constructive analysis, and it does not, and it's a strong indication that something is not right with the turbines themselves. And if you see also that the wind index is fine and the operation and maintenance downtimes are as expected, that's an even stronger indication that something is not right with the turbines.
But Ajit, if the manufacturer is not giving you or it is tweaking the data that you get from the SCADA, can you put up an independent SCADA system which is not tweaked?
You see, they record both the details. If you have enough muscle power, they will share both the information.
But you then have the option to have
With most of the
independent.
company, they with most of the company they give this derived wind speed. So when you plot a auto power curve, the power curve looks fine.
It will look fine.
In our case, we managed to get the data.
Yeah.
To be fair, I would not call it a tweaked wind speed. They do some calculations to take into account the wake behind the rotor and to correct this wind speed to represent what they think is the right wind speed that is seeing the wind turbine to then operate to operate the wind turbine. It's not really a tweak. It's a correction of what the
but it can be calculated from the SCADA data itself. That suppose you have the power curve, you have the torque, you have the pitch, all these things. One can calculate whether at this wind speed the generation would have been this, provided the torque was this and the temperature was this. I mean, this kind of thing is possible to catch them. Fortunately, we don't have any supplier here.
Most of the time, RPM and power will have a good correlation.
Yeah. So from those things one can catch because they cannot totally do away with the physicality of the thing, how it is performing. Yeah. So I would like to thank all of you for taking out your time and making your very nice presentations here. And I think this was a very reasonably high quality session with high quality presentations by all of you. And I thank you all for joining us here. Thank you very much, Mark, Matthias, Bhupati, Ajit, Shrestha. Thank you. Thank you. So I'll then exit this, leave the event. Okay. Bye-bye.